Hi, I'm Sabastian Desotelle with Midwest Supplies and Northern Brewer, where twice a year we're able to offer home winemakers the unique opportunity to bring some of the freshest and highest quality grape juice, or must, home to ferment into your own wine. This comes from different vineyards and regions around the world, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect and some tips and tricks along the way. Harvest is always an exciting time of year, and luckily, with the northern and southern hemisphere, we're able to take advantage of that excitement twice. During the spring, we work with vineyards in Chile, in the southern hemisphere, where they harvest, crush, and press more than a dozen varietal grapes into fresh juice that is frozen and shipped north for us to ferment. Then, in the fall, we're able to repeat the entire process in the northern hemisphere and indulge in some of the best that Italy and California have to offer. Now, I use the term frozen pretty loosely. The buckets are packaged and shipped to us at 26 degrees Fahrenheit. But with the bricks or sugar content of that juice, it doesn't actually freeze into a solid mass. Usually it's a little bit more slushy, but the biggest thing is it's cold enough for the yeast to not ferment. So what makes this fresh juice such high quality? Well, let's look at something you might be a little bit more familiar with wine kits. Now, some of you have made one or two kits where there are some who have filled their entire cellar. When you're looking at wine kits, the biggest difference in price and quality is the amount of varietal juice you have compared to the concentrate, and typically how much water you're then topping up with. So whether you have a kit that's 10, 12, 16, 18 liters, they all make 6 gallons or 23 liters of wine. With the fresh juice coming in from the vineyards and regions around the world, it is 100% unconcentrated varietal juice. That makes some of the best wine that I've personally made at home. Now let's talk about the fresh varietal juice and how easy the process is. Once the grapes are harvested, crushed, and pressed, the juice is balanced for acidity and then put into a 6-gallon fermenter with a built-in airlock. The vineyard then selects specific yeast strains for each varietal of grapes and then chills it down to put the yeast into hibernation. That frozen juice is then shipped up to the Midwest or Northern Brewer retail stores, where literally all you have to do is pick up the juice, let it thaw, and the yeast will wake up and start fermenting the fresh juice into wine. And really that's it. From there, that's your primary fermentation. You would then transfer to your secondary, stabilize, degas, clarify, just like any wine kit that you've made. Now, I've made a pile of these wines to now make up a huge portion of my cellar. And there are a few things that you can do on the first day to help you along the way and help the process. For example, one of the things that we recommend is adding some bentonite and nutrient. Now, bentonite, all you have to do is open up the bucket when you get it home, mix up the bentonite per the instructions on the packet, and sprinkle that in. This typically does come in all of the wine kits, so you're probably already familiar with this process. You're just adding it after you're at 6 gallons, versus in the wine kit, you add it right away to the little bit of water. For nutrient, it is definitely recommended to add nutrient to these. I've done it without nutrient and it ferments just fine. The nutrient just helps your yeast out a little bit more. The yeast have gone into hibernation and they've traveled a long way at pretty cold temperatures. So having some nutrient in there gets the yeast just a little bit more of what they need to ferment the wine a little bit better. As mentioned before, the fresh juice ships up in a 6-gallon bucket with a built-in airlock. Now, a pro tip on this is it's 6 gallons of fresh juice in a 6.5-gallon bucket, and you can just ferment it in that just fine. What I like to do is actually transfer it over into a 7.9-gallon bucket. It just gives a little bit more headspace, and it does prevent maybe a little bit of that wine spurting out the top and having to wipe off some spray off of your wall. Your wife yelling at you, getting mad at you, you're not allowed to make wine anymore. If you're transferring your wine over to a different bucket, again, while this isn't necessary, if you do transfer it over, make sure to stir up all of the yeast that may have settled down to the bottom of the bucket. So what I typically do is pour in about half of the wine that's in the bucket into my sanitized fermenter, and then I take a sanitized spoon and stir it really aggressively to get any of that yeast that have settled out, and then pour the remainder of the juice into the bucket as well. That just makes sure that you don't leave any healthy yeast behind, and you're gonna have the best fermentation possible. Not only does the additional headspace give you a little bit more room for the fermentation to happen, it also gives you a little bit more space if you want to customize your wine a little bit more. In a red wine, you could add in grape skins to add a little bit more body, a little bit more tannin, and a little bit more boldness and character. In the really high-end wine kits, a lot of the red wines will come with grape skins. We offer grape skins a la carte on the side, so you can take this 100% varietal juice and add in your grape skins just to bring up that quality even more. If you're going to add in the grape skins, I will tell you from personal experience, they will not fit in the bucket that it comes in. It displaces too much volume, and so you do need to transfer that over into a 7.9 gallon bucket. Now, whether you transfer into a 7.9 gallon larger fermenting bucket or you ferment right in the bucket that it came in, totally fine. The next steps are exactly the same. You're going to transfer into a carboy, you're going to stabilize, degas, just like you've done in your wine kits before. If you haven't done a wine kit before, no stress. We have step-by-step instructions that come with these buckets that'll walk you through every bit of the process that you need to make this wine from beginning to end. So now that you know all about the juice, let me tell you a little bit about how to get it. We start the pre-orders for these a couple months leading into harvest. So in the spring, we usually start pre-orders around February, and those go into about the end of March. And in the fall, for the Northern Hemisphere, we start pre-orders around July to August timeframe, and those go through September with the juices arriving in October. Roughly speaking, again, we are at the mercy of harvest and the grapes growing themselves. We try to make this as easy as possible for you. You can pre-order either in our retail stores or online. If you do pre-order online, they still must be picked up at one of the local retail stores, either Midwest Supplies or Northern Brewer. To make sure that you don't miss out on this opportunity, be sure to follow our social media, follow Midwest Supplies and northernbrewer.com, and keep up to date on some of the emails that we send out, because we do try to make sure that you don't miss the opportunity of harvest this year.